And if we have time left over at the end, we're going to open it to public comment, okay? But we have from 5 until 7 o'clock. So the public comment question is going to be, or the public comment portion is going to be basically dictated by how much time we have left. But we want to answer as many questions as possible because all the players, as you can see, are sitting up here tonight. And we know lots of you have questions about why we're not doing this or why we're not doing that or what's happening with this. And we want to be able to put as much information out tonight as we can. So if you've got questions, please fill out a blue card. Don't be shy. Sit in the back. This is a small group. This is informal. Come on up to the front so we can be nice and cozy together. And my first presentation tonight is Dr. Jeffrey Lewis from Legacy Health Endowment. And he has done a lot of research for us. And he's got some statistics and some information that we need and we want to put out. So we're going to start with him first. So, Dr. Lewis, are you there?
I am. Thank you very much.
Okay, and then let me just say one more thing. Dr. Lewis's presentation is sitting on the back table next to the blue cards. So if you all want a copy of it, you can get it back there on that back table. And also the police department's presentation is back there as well. So Dr. Lewis, go ahead, please.
Councilmember Monette, Councilmember Bixel, thank you for the opportunity. I want to talk to you about our work on homelessness. For those of you who have a copy of the memo, the first issue is food security. One of the things that we did was to examine how many food programs exist in Turlock. We found at least 30 programs. Now, the importance of that isn't of the number of programs, but on the overlap in who the programs are serving. The most important aspect of this is when the city council is asked for financial assistance, we believe it's important to first understand what programs are feeding people, where there is duplication, overlap, or a poor use of city dollars. So to that end, we recommend that before the city council spends additional dollars on feeding programs, that it dig deeply into who's being funded and whether or not the city could collaborate with one nonprofit or hire a full-time staff member to really be responsible for the feeding and housing of homeless individuals and families. In taking this approach, the idea is to say that to taxpayers and Turlock City voters that we're all being responsible in how public dollars are being spent. Which leads to the second topic of accountability. Because accountability is the bedrock of any publicly funded program. For example, we ask the question, what's the return on my investment? Where the city of Turlock makes a grant and the nonprofit doesn't provide data, the question is why? So, for example, with respect to the Turlock Gospel Mission, and I'm just using them as an example, before the city goes forward with more construction, the issue that we look at is how much has been spent so far, how were those dollars spent, has an accounting of those dollars been submitted to the city for the public to be familiar with, and if not, then why would the city fund more construction without understanding how the first hundreds of thousands of dollars were spent. In one respect, this is a great example of a city needing to dig deeper into how public dollars are spent for programs for the homeless or any program. So those of you who were in City Council a couple of weeks ago, where I presented data on the Legacy Health Endowment grant that we received from the city, I shared with you data on the kinds of people who were being served, how it's being served, and that the Legacy Health Endowment does not take $1 from the city to operate the program. It's purely for services to people, a model which we firmly believe in. At the other side of that, for other nonprofits, whether the city puts a cap on the administrative expenses that a nonprofit is allowed to charge against its city dollars. If it doesn't, it should. For example, when Legacy Health Endowment funds a grant, our administrative allowance is somewhere between 15 and maybe 18% max, so that the nonprofit understands what can be spent, and we know that we can do an audit of their expenses afterwards. To the extent that the city can undertake such an approach, I would encourage them to do so, and to be able to come back to voters and taxpayers and be able to say, here's how these dollars were spent. The third issue is healthcare. As many of you know, the city funded a mobile health program through Community Health Centers of America. It's been serving people, through since January, and oftentimes at the Turlock Gospel Mission, We Care, United Samaritans Foundation, Salvation Army, the International Rescue Committee, as well as one church. The program has worked well. I gave you some examples in the memo of the kinds of people who are being helped. They've seen more than 150 people the first 8 months.
Mr. Petrolakis?
Is there a violation of Browning?
No, they can watch. They can watch.
Because Councilmember Abram?
Yeah, we had a council member at one of the public meetings, but you guys were on.
I just don't want a
panel,
Brown
and
Act
they think real
violation.
fast.
Are we good?
Yeah, they can sit in the audience.
Okay, perfect. Go ahead, Dr. Lewis. I apologize for the interruption. Welcome, Councilmember Abram.
And I'll check if I'm right or not.
So, having served 150 people, they will be serving more people throughout the end of the year, doing vaccinations, physicals, etc. And we'll have a good idea on the number of people served month by month. So as those numbers increase, I will submit those to the city manager so he can share them with the city council and the public. Another topic that we've looked at is how you begin to address combating homelessness for former inmates, people who were incarcerated in a city or county or state correctional facility and who come out without a place to live. The most important part to start with for any person who had been incarcerated is to find out what medications they were taking before being released, and whether we can assist them with filling those medications upon release so that they can stay on that medication cocktail with the hope that it will help them remain independent and unincarcerated. That's a program that we're looking at to see how it might be done. But it feeds into what I consider one of the most important topics: how you begin to focus on homeless families. In Turlock, based on data I received today from Turlock Unified School District, 93 homeless students, some are newcomers, and some are unaccompanied minors. But many of them are from families who are living in hotels, couch surfing with other families, and seeking and searching for a place to live. I had hoped that the project that John Glavin was developing would have allowed more homeless families to utilize that facility. But since Mr. Glavin has gone quiet, it's not clear to me what's happened to the program and what the future of housing might be. I know the city manager has some excellent ideas on what the city might be able to do, and we should hope that those will focus on homeless families in particular. The county has done a lot of work with homeless veterans. The Area Agency on Aging, led by Margie Palomino, can be very resourceful to help with those programs. And hopefully, we can get that addressed sooner as opposed to later. The last thing is, when we go back to talk about feeding Turlock, the Gospel Mission has a state-of-the-art kitchen that one of our foundations funded. Soon, We Care will have a beautiful new kitchen. United Samaritans Foundation has an operating kitchen. And at some point, as we prepare for the colder weather, we need to ask the question, can we have a centralized feeding program as opposed to multiple kitchens serving multiple people, or in some cases, the same people? Is there a way that we, through the city, can approach these programs and say, if you want a grant from the city, we're going to find one program that will serve families across the city, as opposed to multiple programs and multiple grants. The last issue that I wanted to raise is drug and alcohol treatment for the homeless as well as other people. One of the great programs in Turlock is Prodigal Sons and Daughters. I've done a masterful job in helping teenagers and adults. I'm not sure if they were ever made the city council list or the city staff's list, but they are worthy of a very careful examination because of their success rate in helping individuals become drug-free and alcohol-free. Councilmember Moniz, Councilmember Bixel, let me stop there and open it up for questions, if I may.
Absolutely. Okay, let me just stop there for a second. Those of you that came in late, on the back table in the corner, there are blue cards. If you will get your questions on those cards, we want to get them answered. Also, Legacy Health Endowment's presentation that we just heard, there's a photocopy of it back there on that table, and the police department's presentation is also back there on that table. Does anybody have any questions about what we just heard on this portion? Harry?
What's the success of what we just heard?
What is the success of what we just heard? Dr. Lewis, did you hear that?
Well, I can tell you that the success of the mobile health program has been wonderful. You know, you're serving 150 people who would otherwise not have access to health care, and many would have ended up in the hospital emergency room. Additionally, you had people who could not get in to see a doctor for 3 to 6 months who utilized the program. So I'd say it's a great success from that. But if you look at the document that we submitted, there's some examples of how the mobile health program served as an intervention to help, people with very specific needs who otherwise would have been hospitalized. The intervention of this program has been terrific, but we'll continue to evaluate it as time passes.
What has been spent on that to make that what you said?
How much money's been spent?
How much has been spent on the mobile health clinic?
I believe the grant that they received was $300,000, and they're submitting invoices on I think they're submitting invoices on a monthly basis to the city manager. So divide 12 into $300,000, and that's what they would submit every month.
No.
Can you repeat that last statement?
Be 25.
I think
over a year.
the program submits an invoice each month to the city for reimbursement. So you'd have to ask the city manager for the specifics.
We can get that specific information to you. Gentleman in the maroon shirt, I'm sorry, I don't know your name.
My name is Frank Ayala from Turlock.
Hi, Frank. What's your question?
Question. It says here, if you freeze the spending, which is proposed in the recommendations, in the program you just talked about, wouldn't be in effect for 6 months, nor would any of these stories happen because you wouldn't have the money to take care of them. So I guess the question would be, wouldn't it be a better option to just have pre-planning with more partnerships instead of freezing these people out for 6 months? It doesn't make any sense because you're actually worsening the problem and putting more burden on the police department.
Dr. Lewis, did you hear that?
I did not.
Okay, I'm gonna try to paraphrase. So the question is, if we were the portion in your proposal that proposes that we freeze the spending, if we did that, would it not put a bigger burden on the police department? And what was the last part of that, Fred?
Well, all these stories that are happening about all these people being taken care of, that wouldn't happen.
Right.
Because there wouldn't be any money to take care of them.
So what he's saying is the success stories that we're reporting about what's happening wouldn't be able to be happening if they weren't being taken care of.
Well, I don't disagree with you. I put it out there as something to consider. But at some point, the public deserves to see a forensic accounting of city dollars spent on homeless programs across the board.
I understand what he's saying. It's not an answer, but I get it.
Okay, Mr. Bridegroom?
So, two quick questions. I'm just curious of why the mobile health clinic at Monte Vista Chapel, and I only ask because that's not really a poor portion of the town. And then, yes, the option that Frank was talking about, I don't understand why you would have to freeze funding after December 31st of this year. Why couldn't you do what I've been asking you to do for I don't know how long and do the audit now, between now and then?
Okay. So the question is, why is the...
Oh, I heard him.
Oh, you got him, sorry.
Yeah. So you don't have to freeze funding. It's just one way of approaching it. It may not be the right way, but it's worth discussion. The second issue with respect to Monte Vista Chapel, we looked for churches who wanted to participate. They offered. Ironically, people from across the city, knowing that they had a free clinic, came there. So the fact that it's on not in a poor area. Remember, the mobile health program isn't designed for the poor; it's designed for city residents, and allows people to attend regardless of income or insurance status. So, ironically, I had a lot of people who came to Monte Vista Chapel for services from different parts of the city.
Anybody else with questions on?
So this is not about homeless? This is about,
It's a piece to it. Because some of the people that are utilizing the mobile health clinic are homeless. You can't discriminate. We can't say it's just for homeless, right? It has to be open to everybody. And when he's providing the data, he's giving us the data for everybody.
so it's 3 months to see a doctor in Turlock, no matter who you are.
Not at the mobile health clinic. Frank?
One more question.
Yeah.
On the drug and alcohol addiction treatment, I think you need to tread very carefully here, because you're treating them differently, and technically it's a violation of the 14th Amendment and 16th Amendment for what's the ADA law. My question is, that from what I see, that the city of Turlock allocated its funds from the opioid settlements to the county of Stanislaus County. Now, those funds, if you partner with Stanislaus County, could be used, in fact, for addiction treatment, because it's within the realm of that settlement to use those funds for addiction. So instead of doing this, I think if you partner with Stanislaus County, you can get those funds that were gonna go to here, which would have been about 45,000, and you could get those funds allocated for addiction treatment here instead of doing this plan. You're treading really on water here with the 14th Amendment and 6th Amendment, because you specifically identify people to treat them differently than the rest.
Frank, was there a question in there?
Well, no, I guess that's more of a statement, I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's
Well,
okay. I just want to.
The question would be, how does he, I mean, the question would be for the city manager, is that possible to go to Stanislaus County and partner on that issue for those funds to come in here and do the addiction versus Stanislaus spending it any way they want to spend it?
The
Sure.
answer is yes, it's possible.
Anybody else with questions for Dr. Lewis? Yes, ma'am.
We had just talked about that we have about 30 organizations that come in and feed our homeless, which is a lot of money being put in together, which homeless have food to eat all from morning until night. And it just, I talked with Amy and with Pam, and they said that there was going to be, I don't know if it's been done, that there was going to be somebody that's going to go through that and get it to where there's like maybe breakfast, lunch, and dinner at certain places or one certain place, so that it's not all through the day and not expend more money than is necessary.
Right. So did you get the pamphlet that was put out? It's on the back table. Make sure you pick up a copy before you walk out. No, so that's exactly why we asked for all of the data. We asked Dr. Lewis to go after that and see where, because we didn't know what we had. That's why we asked for the data. And on the front page is that big old pie with all those 30 places, and that's what we're going to tackle next. Does that answer your question? Make sure you pick that up on the back table before you go. Anybody else with questions for Dr. Lewis? Yes, ma'am.
In that pie, though, it's showing like Turlock Gospel Mission, Salvation Army, Turlock, stuff like it's repetitive. So it's not
Because they have
different.
multiple programs.
Okay.
So that's why. You can't, if you just put it on there for once, it looks like there's less than there really is. If you're going to flush out the problem, we need to know where every resource is for everything. United Samaritan has different feeding programs too. There's different baskets. Anybody else? And then I need to close out Dr. Lewis. Yes, Christian.
And just about this, so is this similar to the medical thing in that these 30 are not necessarily aimed at feeding homeless people, just feeding people in the city of Turlock?
Dr. Lewis, did you hear Mr. Kirby's question?
I did not.
Okay, so the question is, of the 30 people that you surveyed, do those organizations only serve homeless individuals, or do they just feed people in general?
Both.
Okay.
So it's similar to the medical thing, where anybody could eat at these places, not necessarily just home.
Correct.
I just want to.
Anybody else? Mr. Bridegroom?
Just a quick one. You probably won't like this, but at the December meeting, when that memorandum of understanding between the city and the Legacy Health Endowment, Mr. Lewis promised to come back every month and give a presentation, a report to the city council. This is really the first one that we've gotten. I'm asking, is he planning on giving us reports on a regular basis?
He's probably going to give reports as often as the information is not changing. Lots have changed since that December meeting, and I know that's your concern because you brought it up at the council meetings. But yes, we will put it out regularly. Is it going to be monthly at this stage in the game with what we know today? Probably not. Anybody else with questions for Dr. Lewis? Yes, ma'am.
I'd like to know why we have meetings at 5 o'clock. This is
Okay.
very difficult.
Ms. Jackson, that's not a question for Dr. Lewis. He just gave a presentation. Do you have a question for Dr. Lewis?
So I will go, is this being recorded?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
You bet. Mr. Franson?
Yeah, does Dr. Lewis have any kind of data and projections toward this being for Turlock people versus people coming to Turlock? That is one of the biggest concerns.
Sure.
And me being out covering the news on the streets, overdoses, the cat being lit on fire, like these people end up being reported that they do have addresses and they're not in Turlock. So that's why to say homeless, seems like the families that aren't homeless that need help, that's a major concern that's been skipped over. But I'm not seeing where this is going to help the concern of us growing homeless, because other counties and cities have decreased their homeless. And in Turlock's plan, this is just offering more services, which again, some of it is a change for the better. But is this going to be addressed to stop growing homeless? And transients coming to Turlock for these services, because these all sound really good. And as I believe Mr. Bridegroom and the chief just talked to someone outside City Hall the other night, the guy said it's easier to be homeless in Turlock than in Modesto. And this sounds like it's going to be even easier.
Okay, so what exactly is your question for Dr. Lewis?
Does this address if it's for Turlockers or what is the projection for growing homeless by offering more great services? And for the region too.
Dr. Lewis, did you hear that?
I did not.
So the question is, what does this do for Turlock, and does it grow the Turlock homeless population because we're offering more services? I don't think it's geared there, but okay, go ahead.
No.
Mr. Cortez.
So, let me finish.
Okay, quickly, because I'm running out of time and I got to move on.
Okay.
Go ahead.
The program, when you look at these individual programs, are designed to serve a lot of people. They're Turlock residents or people living in Turlock, on the streets or elsewhere. What we're suggesting is a strategy across the board that you begin to understand who you're feeding and are they Turlock residents, are they from elsewhere, and to the extent that we have a growing or not food problem feeding families as well as individuals, we understand the breadth of the problem. Right now, you have multiple programs serving food across the board. They're wonderful programs. But at some point, when you have limited city dollars, you have to ask, are we getting the best value for every public dollar being spent? The value that you have in Turlock is a city manager who understands the complexity of these problems, and he listens very carefully, and he's a great partner. Same thing with the deputy city manager. Now, we don't always agree, but I'm honored to work with them because of what they're able to accomplish. Thank you.
Mr. Cortez.
Joe Cortez with the Turlock Journal. Jeffrey, regarding point number 4, combating homelessness of former inmates, how would you characterize your meeting with the sheriff? Were you met with a firm no?
Did you hear that?
Yes, I did, and thank you, Mr. Cortez. Great to hear your voice. I have not met with the county sheriff on this specific issue. We did meet with him, 12 or 14 months ago on a different issue. So I'm hoping with guidance from the city council that I can have a robust conversation with the county sheriff.
Thank you. Okay, I had one last gentleman in the back that I'm going to take a question from, and then I have to move on. Sir? Did you both have your hands up?
Yes.
Okay, quickly. Questions only, not comment, just questions.
Question, what do you consider homeless? Because as a father with a homeless child, we're not allowed to go to certain programs. Like, I could not take my child to your new navigation center because of certain things. So where do you guys consider, like, I know you say homeless, but as a prior dad with being homeless with a child, I can't take my kid into some programs.
Okay, somebody else is going to answer that question later on because that's not a question for Dr. Lewis. The other gentleman in the back row, please.
My name is Ken Kelleher. I live in Turlock.
Hi, Ken.
You know, he doesn't address how you determine if these people are from Turlock or not. Because it only makes sense that when you keep giving out health services, you keep giving out food and anything and everything else, more and more and more people are going to come. So what is the answer to that? When does it end? Because when more people come and there's not enough money now, what do you do about that? Does it grow and grow and grow? How do you cap this? What's the end game with this?
Sure, understood. So, Dr. Lewis, the question is, how do we know that the people we're helping are from Turlock and they are Turlock people? Do we track the data that's specific?
You'd have to survey every program that's feeding people. I suspect some do and some do not have this information. But I can tell you that food insecurity facing families is growing, not shrinking.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to cut it off for the Legacy Health Endowment. Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for making yourself available. I appreciate you taking the time, and we bid you a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Chief Hedden because he has a quick presentation to give us. But before I do that, I'm going to say it one last time. You guys have questions? After Chief Hedden makes his presentation, we're going to open it up for all the questions. I know I just had that narrowed to Dr. Lewis, but that was because he was out of town and I had time constraints and I had to get him done and over with. So I really want to be able to answer as many questions as possible. So if you'll put the questions on the blue cards in the back, we'll get you answers. If we have time left over, there's a difference, folks, between public comment and asking questions. If you want answers to questions, that's the goal. We know everyone's upset. We know everyone thinks we're not moving fast enough. We've heard all that, but what we really want to do is be able to provide you with information tonight. So if everyone will just get as many questions down on the blue cards as you can, the city clerk is going to pick them up. And then after Chief Hedden and Raul's presentations, we will open it up and take on what we can. Okay? Thanks, sir. Saw you.
All right. I want to thank you all for being here with us tonight to talk about homelessness. It's an important issue. I've talked to many of you regularly. The emails, the phone calls, the pictures, all of those things that come in are helpful to what I do. It helps me understand the perspective through your lens. And I know that homelessness is impacting your businesses. I know that it's impacting you and quality of life here in Turlock. But I also want you to know that every day our staff is out there dealing with this issue on your behalf, working to bring blight in our community under control. I have been maintaining statistical data. I've gotten a lot of questions from different people in the community, and it's all of them are thought-provoking, and they take me down a road of taking a deeper dive into looking at things from your lens. In law enforcement, we have many challenges. Homeless is not a law enforcement problem, it's a social problem, but law enforcement is dealing with that in our communities, in communities statewide and nationwide. A lot of the challenges here in California, and Turlock specifically, have been impacted our community and impacted law enforcement's ability to solve this problem, like AB 109, if we remember, back in 2011, Prop 47 from 2014, Prop 57 from 2016. And as I've been looking at this and researching this over the years, it directly correlates to the explosion of homeless in our community. If you look at the point in time data over the years, it was not a good idea for prison realignment, where we released thousands of inmates in the community. So we put the onus onto the county jail system, who is already over capacity. I believe the sheriff has 1,700 beds, and that's met with staffing challenges. There's a number of things that play into classification, and we've put all of that onto the counties, and they're unable to house people for certain offenses, and then they wind up in our community. And then you look at Prop 47 and decriminalizing what was once felonies, and then telling law enforcement to go out there and deal with this. And your only tool is not to arrest this person anymore, but to write them a citation and send them on their way to further victimize the community. And I talk about this at the beginning because, you know, it's important that you folks are here. You're paying attention. You're engaged to what's going on, what type of legislation. And I want to talk about some of the daily fight that I have as a police chief with the California Police Chiefs Association in bad bills that are coming every election cycle. So I just want to give you a couple of these to show you what we're dealing with and what we're sending letters to our elected officials at the state level on to try to combat. AB 93, that would prohibit consent searches. That directly impacts law enforcement. We're out in communities contacting people. Oftentimes consent searches result in drugs or dangerous weapons on people in our community. Thankfully, through our efforts, that bill is now dead. Another bill that's also dead through the work of the California Police Chiefs Association is SB 402. This would have prevented law enforcement from responding to calls for service related to mental health, substance abuse, public defecation, and more. We're with these proposed laws, we're further challenging law enforcement, creating an issue where it's harder for us to do our job. More SB 58, decriminalizing hallucinogens and other specific narcotics. This is just more down that road of making narcotics legal for use in our communities, and compounding the problem of homelessness in our communities with many homeless folks. And I'm not creating a broad brush. I'm not trying to paint the whole homeless community as drug users, but we do see a significant amount of the homeless community that are drug dependent. And we're continuing to water down the laws and the tools that we have as law enforcement. And there's just many, many others. So I ask you before I start to pay attention to those things, because they're important. And it's important that law enforcement has the tools necessary to go out and do our job in the community and to effectively protect our community. My first slide here, I want to talk about some of the trends. If many of you were at the first two homeless meetings that we had last year, I talked about how homelessness is impacting our calls for service and the reports taken. So the first number there on the left, 8,665 police reports taken. Of those police reports, 561, or 6.5%, involved homeless individuals. So it's a relatively small number in terms of reports were taken for crimes in Turlock. Now, calls for service and going out and dealing with somebody that's not necessarily a crime could be a different perspective. But this year, out of 8,283 police reports taken, 454, or 5.5%, to a lesser degree, involved homelessness. So because many of you were at the last presentation, I put this slide in there just to kind of show you what's going on and where the numbers are staying. It's relatively the same. Again, I talked about code enforcement. So when I took on the job here as police chief, I had an opportunity to come in, where the city was looking at a reorganization, and our city manager came in and wanted to make a lot of changes. The council was involved in making a lot of changes to make services to the community more effective. And one of the questions I had early on was, Chief, if we give you code enforcement, can you make this thing happen? Can you make this successful? And we're going to give you the resources and tell us what you need. So I have a full-time team of 7 in code enforcement now. We're finally up to full staff there. I am losing one of my code enforcement compliance techs because he is going on to the police academy to serve us as a police officer. So we're not sad about that, but we'll be working on filling his position. Code enforcement has made a dramatic impact on our community. They're going out, they are soliciting the no trespass letters with businesses to give the officers more tools to enforce private property homeless issues. Code enforcement starts their day, each day downtown in the beginning of the day, and they make a push talking to the homeless, educating them, taking care of any violations that they see in terms of drinking in public, things like that. They've also reduced the impact of our officers having to do that. So our officers are able to focus more on extra patrols and police-related work, and code enforcement now focuses on homeless to a larger degree. With code enforcement, some of their stats from January to August of 2023, they've handled 68 abandoned vehicles, 52 of them on public property, 16 on private property. During the same time period, 800 shopping carts. It's now up to 815 total, 915 total for the program. That makes a dramatic impact in our community. And I tell this story because I was at City Hall, and I'm standing in the city manager's office, and the mayor is in there, and I'm touting about how we're attacking the shopping cart problem, and we're trying to find a solution to it, and we're really making a dramatic impact. And as I'm talking to her, my back's to the window, and a guy with 2 shopping carts is walking behind me, and she says, "Well, you missed 2," in true fashion. But that is something that we see as a problem in our community, and we are targeting. Once again, I believe during a council conversation with Councilmember Moniz, who happens to be an attorney, we were talking about how once a shopping cart theft could be a felony, and that's not the case anymore, because of Prop 47. 419 trips to scavenger at over 300,000 pounds of garbage taken. And if you could imagine what it would be like in Turlock if we weren't doing these cleanup efforts. I have my neighborhood resource officer, Ian Rodriguez, in the back of the room with us. He coordinates all of this with his team and with the code enforcement team and city crews. We have to give credit to the city crews. It's really a team effort, and they go out every Friday. All week long, they're identifying areas of town with blight, garbage accumulation. They're going out and doing pre-work with the homeless, saying, "We're coming to clean this up. You need to be gone. This isn't acceptable in Turlock, and we'll be back to take this property and remove it." 48 storage of property. We talk about enforcement a lot. That comes up. The police department is out enforcing our code, and that's happening daily. Storage of property is a big one for us. We've decided we're not allowing this in our community. You don't get to, and I'll come up later in my slides with some pictures that were submitted by a business owner downtown to me, and I take it to heart. And we've really worked to fix that problem, but we don't allow the homeless to store property to the degree that they were on our public sidewalks in our parks. So our staff is out there daily. They're training the homeless to keep this neat and tidy, what you can possess with you. It doesn't mean stuff scattered all over the parks. We're considering that a violation of the code. Same thing with drinking in public, smoking in our parks. They're going to be taking a very deep dive into that and enforcing what we can. We always hear about what we can enforce, right, and how our hands get tied. But we're taking the approach of enforcing what we can because that's important too. And it shows people that that is not acceptable in our community. Of the storage property, just to give you a glimpse of how that goes, of the 48, 11 were returned to the owner, means that after it was posted, after it was taken by the department, they took the opportunity to come down and collect their property. 21 items were destroyed, and we have, at the time of this count, 16 cases that we're holding, waiting for that 90 days to expire on whether they pick it up or it gets released. This is some pictures that were sent to me. I'd referenced them earlier of downtown. This is quite a few months ago, but this is a reality of what it was looking like and what business owners were facing in our community. I talked about code enforcement starting their day out downtown, and they've really curbed this problem. I've heard a lot of feedback from the business owners that this has improved dramatically from what it was. It's not perfect. I drive by the parks on the weekends. I was leaving a council meeting the other night, and there was somebody in a storefront with a sheet or blanket taped to the business, and they were kind of cozy behind that. And I made that person move along and have placed the emphasis on my staff to start reaching out to the businesses that don't have no trespass letters on file and encourage them to put that on file so that we can enforce this in front of the businesses, because they shouldn't have to deal with coming in for the day and dealing with the stains or garbage that's left behind after the person does decide to vacate or code enforcement moves them along. So I want to put code enforcement's contact information. It's there at the bottom of the slide. It should be part of your package. If you have concerns, if you're seeing things, please share them with code enforcement. It puts it on their radar and allows them to really understand what you are feeling as a community and seeing out there. This next slide is for the care team for my colleague here, Raul Dominguez. So I'll turn it over to him.
Good afternoon, everyone. Oh, it's a little loud. My name is Raul Dominguez. I am a probation officer with Stanislaus County, and I manage the county's care team. So today I kind of want to give you guys a little bit of an overview of what the care team does. I know some people have heard about it. We've been here in Turlock for a little bit over a year now, trying to help homeless individuals out of being homeless, or try to help people who are in distress not be in distress, right? So sometimes we hear a lot of the comments of, like, there's a homeless individual over by the corner who's talking to the air and who's, taking their shirt off and dealing, maybe not committing a crime, but putting themselves in distress, and at the same time, community members, right, as they're driving by or seeing it. So we try to curb that. We try to work with those individuals to get them the services they need and identifying the correct service. So as we work through some of these things, yeah. So what does the care team do? So what we do is we complete the vulnerability index, the VISPADAT form, which that's what gets someone into housing. So what's something called a coordinated entry list that the county has. When someone is homeless and needs to get into housing, that's done through HUD, Kansas House, different housing providers in the county. This puts them on the list. So what the vulnerability index study does is, once you do the assessment, it gives the person a score. The higher the score, then the higher they are on the list to get into housing. And I'm pretty sure everyone here is aware we have issue with housing. There's not enough housing for us to get people off the list, but we make sure to complete it so that if that person is really vulnerable, is having a hard time with being homeless and getting into housing, that they are at the top of the list. As we do that, we work with them to obtain vital documents. So that means birth certificates, social security card, IDs. The team does a great job of taking people to those appointments and making the appointments for them to get to those places. For someone to apply for housing, they have to have all these documents in order for them to even be looked at for some type of housing. Life skills education. This is one that's pretty big for us. We have people who we try to get into housing who have been homeless for 13, 14 years, who forget to do the things that become innate for people who have been living in a house. Cleaning your house, taking out the trash, sometimes even bathing themselves. So what we work with is providing those life skills and working with clients in order for them to not just put them in a house and be like, hey, okay, goodbye, figure it out for yourself when they haven't been able to figure it out for the last 13, 14 years. It's still helping them to be self-sufficient, getting their life back on track for them to be truly successful once they go into housing. One of our probably biggest needs is medical needs. So we help people establish a primary care physician. On the team, we have a public health nurse. So here in Turlock, we have a public health nurse, a case manager, and a peer navigator that are out Mondays and Thursdays out in the community, dealing with homeless individuals, dealing with some targeted individuals who the police department has sent over to us to say, these are people that we've been dealing with quite a bit. We're seeing them homeless a lot, having a lot of contact with them. So if you guys can please try to help them. And with that, we're trying to identify, like I said, who they are, what is their issue, and what are the barriers, and try to get rid of some of those barriers to get them into housing or get them stabilized with substance use or mental health. That is the key goal of the team, to get people in better medical condition, mental health condition, get them away from substance use, try to really help them with that. I was saying earlier, substance use is really big. Some of our success stories we have we've filmed a few on the probation department's YouTube channel. There's one we recently uploaded yesterday. It's called Sarah's Story. And then we have another one named Brad's Story. And they talk about being homeless for numerous years and how the care team helped them. But one of the things that we notice, a lot of our successes start with substance use treatment. When we can get someone off of drugs, off of substance, or not using substance, then we can really identify what the issue is. We have times that someone will say, like, this person has a mental health condition, and that's why they're hallucinating, that's why they're, talking to somebody in the air. Once we get them clean and sober, and we can really identify the issue, a lot of times it's been some type of substance use psychosis that they're in. So it's not so much the mental health. The mental health is an underlying condition, but it's more their substance use that's causing these issues. So we've noticed a lot of success when we can get somebody clean and sober and get them treating their mental health issues or the underlying effects of what's really been heightened by the substance use. We work with pet boarding. A lot of our homeless individuals also have pets, so we try to find ways to get their pets somewhere for them to get into treatment, get into housing, or get into shelters. So all of this that I'm talking about, it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. We work with individuals continuously to get them to accept services and build that rapport with them. When we first come out with someone, we're trying to build that rapport. Sometimes we're just offering them some snacks, offering something just to have a conversation, right? So many of the people we deal with have been resistant to taking on services. So we try to encourage them and show them how we can help them become successful. You want to go to the next slide? So this slide, just to kind of show everyone what is a service timeline. How long does it take to get someone moving from one step to the next step? So usually it takes our team an average of about 5 contacts to get someone to sign an ROI, which is a release of information. That means that they're going to come onto the team and want to work with the team, are willing to take on our services. So that means 5 contacts. That doesn't mean it happens in 5 days, right? So I can come out and try to look for someone today. I might not find them. It may be I've come out 5 days this week and I've only been able to see them once. So that means next week, hopefully I'm lucky and I get to see them twice. But the team is constantly out there trying to engage people and try to see where they are. That's where we work really close with law enforcement, with Officer Rodriguez, who's great, who gives us, hey, have you seen Johnny today? No, but, last week he was under the bridge over here, so we go and try to contact them there. And then from there, so it's 5 contacts to get them to sign an ROI, and then it's 34 contacts total, so that's not 34 additional, but it's 34 contacts to get them to sign the VISPAT. So that's, in order for us just to complete the VISPAT form, that's what an additional 29 contacts, I believe it is, to get them there. So sorry if my math is wrong, but that's about the way it goes, about 29, 30 contacts before we get them to sign the VISPAT. That means to get them into the coordinated entry list. From there, it takes us an additional 24 to 30 contacts to get them to complete a mental health assessment. So what we try to do is complete a mental health assessment to get that individual to the correct services. So if someone completes the mental health assessment, and they are what's considered severely mentally ill, then they are sent to a team with the Behavioral Health Recovery Services, which is our mental health team with the county, and they're put into what's called a full service partnership team, which is a team that will provide a case manager for them and help them get into housing, help them with their substance use, help them with their mental health. Once that's completed, it takes us an additional about 20 to 30 contacts to get that person to go into the team, which means we have to build that rapport now with that case manager, because we've been doing all this work with this individual. The individual trusts us, but they have not built that trust with that new case manager. So what we deal with is a population of people who are a lot of times not trusting of people or of county or city government. So what it is we try to provide services. They're resistant and they'll tell us no, but we try to eliminate every barrier. We go as far as the team. All the services we provide. We have an office, but people do not come to the office. Our clients are all seen out in the field. We provide the services to them out in the community. So if I have someone that's coming out from under some bushes or something, and they're like, I want a mental health assessment today, and we feel that they're in the right state of mind to do it, we'll plop out a table right there. Let's sit down, let's talk, and let's try to get this done. Or let's go into McDonald's, let's buy you some lunch, let's try to get this done to make sure we're able to identify the services that they truly need and get them into those services. So that's where the team is really unique. We're out in the community daily, seeing people daily, and trying to eliminate those barriers. People who are homeless, a lot of times you can't make an appointment because they're worried about surviving today. So if I say, hey, Jimmy, come see me next Tuesday in my office, I can ask Jimmy what day it is today, and he'd probably be like, Saturday? They won't know. So it's trying to identify that and get them to be able to get the services immediately and get them to be able to start working on their health, working on their substance use, working on their mental health treatment at that time immediately. So those are the things that the care team does. As you can see, our outreach services, we average about 15 contacts per client per month. That means while we're doing outreach, when we do not know where they are, a lot of times when we're doing outreach, we're kind of bouncing around from place to place trying to find them. We average about 15 contacts per month. Once if somebody goes into our Care 2.0 team, which is our case management team, this person now that's being case managed by Care, the Care case manager is seeing them about 20 times a month. If you look at that, that's about daily on a working period, right? They work 4 days a week, 4 weeks out of the month. Like I said, I'm not a mathematician, but that's about like 16 to 20 around there. So yeah, so we're seeing them constantly. It's really intense case management, really trying to help them through the barriers and get them to the services that they need. So a lot of the people that we deal with that are referred to the care team, they've been homeless for several years. So it's a process. It takes time to help them. Now, do we just help people that are on the care list? No. A lot of times in order to help one person, you have to help a whole community. So if we have one person on the care list and we're like, hey, we're going to help you, get you somewhere, they're not going to be like, yeah, I'm going to leave my buddy here and my dog and the other person that I've been surviving with for the past 4 months by themselves. You got to take us all. So as a team, what do? We take everybody. We take that holistic approach of trying to help everyone to, get out of homelessness. So even though a list that we focus on may be really small or not a lot of people on that list, we target a lot of people to try to make sure that individuals are getting the services that they need in the community.
The care team and Raul have been a tremendous benefit for us here in Turlock. As I was coming on a year and 7 months ago now as the police chief, and was just really drinking through a fire hose of information, the mayor said, hey, I need you to reach out to this care team from the county, and I'm gonna put you in contact with a guy by the name of Raul Dominguez, who I used to work with, and he's a good guy. And I'm like, I know Raul. We go way, way back. So when we contacted each other, it was like we haven't skipped a step, and we're really able to work together. They, during that time period, brought care services to Turlock, so you're seeing them out in the parks in their green shirts. They've taken the burden off of us of having sort of our own care team where we were doing the, for lack of better terms, the touchy-feely stuff, trying to get homeless to services. And we're able to focus more on the enforcement piece, and they're able to work on the programming piece. So it's been a really good marriage of resources for us. Something that I wanted to just close out with and finish up with is we are hearing a lot of the concerns from the community, and as you guys bring things forward, we're trying to jump on these things. One of the things is the pedestrian prohibited signs. I don't know if many of you have seen them around problem intersections. They're at 12 locations now. It's made a dramatic impact for us in what we're seeing of people on those mediums. And we just added one because our staff is recognizing these things and saying, hey, we need one here. Recently by the Dino Mart there on Golden State, they added one, and that has solved the problem for them. Not that we don't see them. I've run people off on the weekend on my way to wash the car or go to Costco or something. So we do see it, but it's curved it a lot for us. The other thing is no parking signs at Broadway Park. We heard from the residents around Broadway Park, and that was really impacting their neighborhood and causing them concerns for safety. So in addition to adding the parks at the cameras to improve overall safety, we added those no parking signs, and we don't have that problem. They're coming back during the day, and we're seeing them hang out there during the day, but they're moving, and they're not a constant fixture at that park that the residents are having to deal with. And then I talked about a little bit about code enforcement and the impact that that's made. Calls for service on homelessness are down. So meaning the calls that the community's calling into the police department have reduced for us. But enforcement and proactive self-initiated activity is up for the police department in terms of dealing with the homeless population. So we're doing more enforcement statistically, and that enforcement is being done to a large degree by our code enforcement team out there in our community, freeing the police officers up again to focus on other problems. Would we agree that we have a red light running problem here in Turlock? So we've asked the officers focus on that as well, because all of these things, homeless is one of the big things that I deal with as the police chief. It takes up a lot of my time, but it's a very small corner of the overall picture of what I'm dealing with in our community in terms of crime and safety issues. So I thank you all for your time for listening to us, and I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Muniz.
Okay, Madam Clerk is right back here. Can you guys pass all those blue cards over to her? All you fine people sitting in the front row, please. Everybody else, can you, I think maybe she's got everybody's cards. And then Officer Dominguez, if you would start us off, please. The gentleman in the back asked what our definition of a homeless person was. Can you address that?
For us and the care team, our definition of homeless is someone who's doesn't have somewhere to stay. So for us, it's usually somebody who's out, doesn't have a roof to stay under. So, or at that point, that's not a shelter. So when you look at HMI, so HMIS, which is the Homeless Management Information System that we all use to put information into, it's a place that is not meant for habitation. So that could be a vehicle, that could be, actually once they stay at someone's house, it wouldn't be considered, but shelter also, that would be in a shelter, but it wouldn't, it's a place where you're not meant to have habitat. So when we go out and do like the pit count, we go out, and that's how it's kind of broken up. Pit count is out in the community. We go out to people who are living out, for lack of a better term, the streets, and then they also do a shelter count for people that are in the shelter.
My question was the whole program was.
Oh.
Homeless man was because I can't take my son to, if I was homeless, to a navigation center. You say they're homeless, so if I happen to be homeless, I cannot take him to a homeless place there. So that might be, what do you consider a homeless program?
I misunderstood
like,
that
I can take him
question.
to TGM.
I thought he said
Where
homeless
I
person.
can get food assistance, but I could not take him to the navigation center because he's a minor. So, like I say, I suppose they're both homeless programs. So what's the definition of a true homeless program? Because like, either one, if I can't take my kid if I was homeless to one place, then that's not a homeless program really, because I wouldn't be allowed there.
So I think you'd be talking about each program is going to have their different specialties and what they're going to look into, right? So if you're talking about someone, I'm just thinking about the Access Center in Modesto, right? That's the county access center. That's for the county, but it's located in Modesto next to the low barrier shelter. There you'd be able to go with your child to go receive services. Now there may be like the Barbarian shelter, which is next to the low barrier shelter. There a child would not be allowed into that place, but it's still offering services to homeless individuals. Yes. So I guess it's still a homeless program. It's just each one is going to have its criteria of who goes into that program. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm going to start with my cards. Mr. Randy, wanting to learn more about, she handed me, I'm just going in order. Wanting to learn more about unhoused downtown and how to keep Turlock clean and safe. Can you narrow that down for us?
Yeah, I think you're probably going to have more of the same questions come through all those forms.
Yeah, I see all the downtown business owners right here on the front row.
Yeah, so hopefully all these programs have successes to them. We can monitor them and see the successes and change them when they're not being successful. But with all the programs, when the homeless have no place to go after leaving services, they seem to come downtown. And that is where an issue starts to occur, where we feel our downtown is this economic engine to commerce or businesses or CPAs and lawyers and realtors and so forth. We're down here to do business, and we have the compassion for the homeless, but it's becoming more and more challenging. Our family made the pictures on some of these photos in these pamphlets, and one other thing I thought was interesting the other day, when your 84-year-old mother calls you and you're 57 years old, you know you're in trouble. Come over here and see me. So I did. And my mom was kind of cute. She was talking about downtown. She knows we're on the board and different properties down here. So how's all that going? And she kind of kept talking. And I said, what were you trying to ask me? She goes, well, my friends are starting to call me. They're starting to see me out and about and ask me. And what's interesting about that is that person is probably 80 years old or more. And a little bit of that person's feeling when she's contacted is they feel a little unsafe of maybe some downtown and other areas in Turlock. And I just thought, I've been thinking about that amongst everything else we're going to hear, but perhaps how do we communicate a little bit more to the senior community that what safety concerns that we may have for them and how we're trying to solve some of those things. So I know there's a million things in those questions, Rebecca, but I think you're going to see plenty more. We're just concerned about our economic engine down here to keep it safe and clean.
Sure. Much appreciated, Randy. Thank you. Okay. How does Turlock get out of the homeless business? Harry, I think that's a loaded question. Does anybody want to tackle that?
It's his responsibility.
Mr. Petrolakis?
Yeah.
You want to blame
I
him?
think he was pointing at the city manager.
Oh.
I'm pretty sure it was you.
You need to start quit telling us why we can't do something, tell us what we should.
Well, remember, it's not me telling you, it's the federal courts telling you. So I asked the chief for I wanted my don't shoot the messenger vest today, Kevlar that would protect me. But I think that, I don't have great news because since the last time we met, there's another case has reverberated. I think it came out probably before the meetings last year, but it's again in Oregon. I don't know what they do in Oregon to get all these cases, but in Grants Pass and so, yeah, well, yeah,
Not anymore.
And they've got 38,000, I think the case said, and they've got a significant homeless problem. They said there. I felt pretty good about Turlock because it was a wide range. In the record, it was they had somewhere between 50 and 600 homeless people in a city of 38,000, and so they were trying to do things about it. But the bad thing about that case, to fall into the trap you set for me, I'm going to tell you the part you can't do, right, is that it was a little unclear in Martin v. Boise about whether, and we've had a lot of email discussions on this, although I haven't had time to participate recently, about do you have to provide the services in the city? And I think the Grants Pass case is pretty clear in its holding. Let's see. I'll deliver the bad news, then maybe we'll get to some good news. We affirm the district court's ruling that the city of Grants Pass cannot, consistent with the 8th Amendment, this is all based on cruel and unusual punishment, which is pretty controversial in legal circles because they're extending cruel and unusual punishment to things that it hasn't traditionally been used for. Consistent with the 8th Amendment, it cannot enforce its anti-camping ordinances against homeless persons for the mere act of sleeping outside with rudimentary protection from the elements or for sleeping in their car at night when there is no other place in the city for them to go. In the city, not in Modesto, not in outside the city, not in another county. So, I think for the Ninth Circuit, which is the federal circuit we're in, I think the law is pretty clear, right? So, now that's the bad part about it. Okay, so I don't think you're going to get out of the homeless business. I think it's kind of how do you do it, right? And obviously we heard the concerns tonight that we've heard before about, and I agree with the gentleman in the back. I mean, it's kind of funny when you get more of what you pay for, or you get more of what you subsidize, and so that is something that isn't discussed a lot in government programs, right? So I'm very sensitive to that, and you have to be careful about what you're funding and how you're funding it. You heard a little bit of that from Dr. Lewis earlier. And so I think that to try to get to something positive, I think that what we're going to finally bite the bullet on is I think we're going to, I think the operators are, both of our current shelters are here. I think they do a very fine job. But because of what the courts say, they really now says you have to, and after this case, you can't enforce local ordinances unless you have a bed for everybody, okay? Now, that might have been a little unclear. Councilmember Moniz and I fought about that, whether the Boise case said that or not, Martin v. Boise. Grants Pass clearly says it, because they kind of paraphrase Boise and, here's the law now in the Ninth Circuit. So, and then remember, we've discussed before, then they undercut what a shelter bed is, right? So if, in this case says it, if you're explicitly religious, in the basis, well, that shelter bed may not count, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, it's just, it's hard to explain, and it's really kind of embarrassing being a member of the bar that I have to try to explain it because it's gone so, it's gone so nutty that, it's really kind of fascinating. So, to cut to the chase, for example, and we've been criticized for this, by the way. We've tried to provide a day center capacity for both shelters, and we've been criticized for that. But the benefit of that is it allows our current shelters, within the way they want to operate, to operate more like the ultimate low barrier shelter. Which I would say is kind of the state of the art now, because you have to provide the ultimate number of beds, and then there are kind of subcategories, right? So, it's what you guys have the acronyms. It's pets, people, and property, right? Mm-hmm. That are the impediments to people wanting to go to a shelter. If they can't have their pets, if they can't store their property, and they can't cohabitate or be with their spouse or their family, right? And so, one of our shelters is about men, the other one's about women with children. And so out of all that morass, my job, since you pointed at me, is to kind of think through what the case law means, and at the end of the day, where are you at? So, okay, that's all the challenge. And so I don't want to, I promised Councilmember Moniz I wouldn't be negative. So I've been negative a little bit, so we'll try to be positive. So I think that you know, when we were able to deal with the encampments, because and thanks to Turlock Gospel Mission, who we entered into a contract with, and they entered into a contract with the fairgrounds for overflow shelter space. And the city attorney loved that because it was COVID time, right? And it was that giant building there, the exhibit hall or something, right? And we had the engineering department make a little map, and you know, we had a lot of capacity there with social distancing, right? With the 6 feet, you know, so that was great. And so I think that the way we've kind of come down on it internally, that's hard to do now because they're back in business because there's no COVID, although I hear it may be coming soon again, so we'll see. So if we had, I'll call it overflow capacity that you know, was readily available, and I think it has to be both big and small, meaning that you should have a large location that if, you know, something bad happened, or you could prove to the court that you could have enough beds, right, for your homeless population, which is basically going to be based on that point in time count. Both cases cite the point in time count, which, you know, in Turlock's in the low, you know, 200, you know, 220s, 230s, something like that. But then you also had smaller spaces that could open up for these categories that only the city attorney is going to worry about and bore the rest of the world with, right? You know, if we had a place that had a few places where, you know, families could clearly go to. If we had a small place where the homeless population with pets could go. If we had a place that specialized in property, and those were just available, you know, then I feel pretty good about it, right? So that's part of the way to go. The other way to go, the Grant Pass case did do something interesting. I was surprised, and a lot of lawyers are surprised, that they applied the Eighth Amendment, the cruel and unusual punishment clause, to essentially administrative fines, you know, which are more civil fines. But what they said is, well, they're really not just administrative or civil fines because they're linked to a criminal proceeding at some point, right? And that's where the Eighth Amendment really comes into play. But at the end of the case, they kind of left it wide open. I think if you moved entirely away from a criminal approach and you had an administrative citation approach, you might be able to do more enforcement. But of course, that's a trap in a way, because if you go down that road, then the Eighth Amendment also has the excessive fine, you know, provisions in it. So depending on what your citations are, the amount, right? I mean, how much is the court going to say you can fine a homeless person for violating a municipal code, right? So it runs into that problem. But, you know, you might be able to do it in a way where you abate the fines or you kind of carry the fines.
Are you suggesting these things to the city?
Yeah, this last one, I've suggested the first. I haven't suggested the second yet because I do think it's a trap. But I wanted to try to come up with some good news, you know, about alternative approaches that might work. The other, let's see. Now, the other thing is, you know, we talked about this the other day. I mean, all this stuff, all these restrictions on what we can do, and I think we've talked about it before, it's limited to public property, not on private property, right? So the chief mentioned earlier, and you know, we were talking about that situation the other day where for the downtown businesses, if somebody's sleeping in your alcove area, right, and I think we're going to look at we're going to know the right of way. We're going to look at, like, you know, where our right of way is and where it's truly private. And if you get those letters on file, that allows us to enforce, you know, a criminal trespass on private property, right? Now, we're a lot better there because none of the cases have really dealt with that yet, right? It's really restrictions on, in our case, a city. And for us, it wouldn't just be city property. In our city limits, we would have this problem probably on any publicly owned property. You know, it's kind of, I was saying about, it's kind of an interesting case if somebody is if somebody's doing this on TID land, right, which is a special district, local government, how's a court going to decide that one? Is the TID going to be able to allow the enforcement of a criminal trespass on their land? I don't know, but on your private property, if you give us the authority to enforce, we can enforce, so that might help a little bit. I'll stop there, because I don't.
Very good.
That doesn't get us out of the business, but.
No, but we are trying, and I'm going to back up for just a second for those of you that don't know. When we first started to tackle this homeless issue 2.5 years ago, we literally had the Boise case, right? Almost everybody sitting in this room right now knows about the Boise, Idaho case and the holding that it brought down for us. So we took that case and we tackled it, and it made sure that we were able to comply with everything that the Boise court ordered in that case. Because what happens when you don't comply? You get in trouble, and some organization or activist people come in and they file a court case, and then we spend God knows how much money battling the court case because we did something the court told us we weren't supposed to do. That was one case. In 2.5 years, you guys, this hasn't even come full circle yet. We now have a total of 20 cases that have all stemmed just from the Boise ruling. And it gets more narrower and more tighter with every case. I believe the Grants Pass holding just came down, like that one's fresh off the press. And we have another one coming down the pike here in the next couple of weeks, should be by the 3rd or 4th week of September. So we literally are trying, but every time we think we're taking 2 steps forward, it's 3 steps backwards because this other court holding just came down and it tied our hands. And I just put that out there because I want people to realize what we're up against in this battle. Mr. Boucher, the second part of your question was, why doesn't the League of Cities encourage all cities to come together and get more done? It's going to take that because city councils all over California are battling this. And if you folks, if it doesn't speak volumes to you that we've had 20 case holdings come out of the Boise case, it should, right? People are fed up. We hear this, we get your emails, we get your phone calls, we see the posts on social media. We know people are fed up. But we're stuck because the federal court rules the land, right? So it's going to take everybody lobbying, not just the League of Cities, the legislatures. And then really quick, and then I'm going to go to the next question. Mr. Petrolakis, there was a holding that came down that had the big, giant dissent in it. How many of those justices dissented in that opinion?
Yeah, I counted. So what happened, this Grants Pass case came out, I think, last September. And then there's a procedure in so that normally in a federal court of appeals, a 3-judge panel will decide the case, and then there's an ability, you can appeal the case not to the Supreme Court yet, but to all the judges in our case, the Ninth Circuit. And so, yeah, that is some good news I should have mentioned. It's almost like there's a civil war in the Ninth Circuit because I think I counted it was 13 or 15 of the judges. It's called en banc review, and bank is Latin for the whole tamale or something. I don't know what the Spanish is. And so 13 or 15 of the judges were in dissent on granting review by the entire Ninth Circuit panel. And that doesn't happen. And in the legal newspapers and stuff, it was the headlines. Because that's really unusual. So you did have some friends there that are judges that think that the Ninth Circuit has gone way astray of what the Eighth Amendment means, and protecting the traditional power of local government to do what you all want us to do, which now we're kind of constrained on. So that was a little bit heartening. And then just to be boring lawyer for a second, to get Supreme Court review, you need to have a split in the circuits. The Ninth Circuit has to say this, and the Fifth Circuit has to say this. Then the Supreme Court will take it for review. So there was kind of for lawyers, there was a great fight over whether there was really a split in the circuits or not, right, that would justify review by the Supreme Court. Now, like most things, it takes a while to get there. It will get there someday because if there's not a split now in the circuits, there's gonna be, because the Ninth Circuit stuff is really, really far afield. So there will be judicial relief probably sometime, but, you know, sometime can be an awful long time, you know, while we're trying to actually deal with these issues on, you know, on the ground.
All right, I'm gonna move on. When the care team is in the field, what are the homeless saying about where they are from, and why do they not want to go into the shelters?
So where they are from, we don't collect that data unless it goes into the VISPADAT. It's not usually something we ask right off the bat, like, hey, how did you get here? Sometimes it's like, how did you get in this situation? Where were you before this? So, but we don't collect that data unless it's and I have to go back to check HMIS if they put that in the VISPADAT, if that's one of the questions. But a lot of them that do not want services, or people who do not, is because either they say don't want to go to the shelter because they've been there and they don't like the shelter, they can't take their pet, they have a significant other that they cannot go with. And then we also get people who just are okay being homeless. I mean, or being just the way they want to be. They want to live a life without responsibility, without having to deal with the stuff that they'll say the term normie, right? Somebody who's normal, who has to go to work, has to, you know, deal with paying bills and stuff. We get people who tell us, I don't want that lifestyle. I'm okay, you know, living out here. It's like camping, and I'm good at camping for a long time, and I have to follow your rules. So, I mean, we run the spectrum. We have people from everywhere, people who just don't want the help, who feel like they want to live this lifestyle, people who have pets who can't leave their pets, people who have significant others they can't leave. So those are the issues that come up when we deal with homeless individuals. So one of the shelters, like the low barrier shelter, which is the one in Modesto, that's the county shelter, that's one of the things that it tries to do is really reduce some of those barriers. So it allows certain pets into the facility. It allows also significant others to be in there. I mean, there's different bunks, but it will allow that type of to deal with those barriers that we come across.
Thank you. Miss Gloria, where you at? Gloria, I have your question. We're going to have to pull that data for you. So if I can get your phone number on this card before you leave, Mr. Officer Dominguez is going to pull that data and get it for you. For those of you that don't know what she wrote down on this little blue piece of paper, regarding the CARE program, how many individuals that were experiencing homelessness have been placed in permanent housing from January of 23 to July of 23? Very good question. I'm sorry we don't have that data on hand. We will get it back to you, okay? But give me your phone number on here before you walk out of here tonight. Okay. Next question, Mr. Patrolakis, I think this is yours. How will the California Supreme Court ruling that are affecting sweeps in San Francisco and Sacramento affect the city of Turlock, if at all?
You know, that one I haven't read it, so I don't know.
Okay. And then can Prop 47 be overridden with the civil code by the city of Turlock? Did you maybe mean municipal code section? Municipal code section by the city of Turlock?
If the chief tells me what that is that that's the...
Yeah, that was where we took felony theft from
the realignment
to 950 and made methamphetamine misdemeanors.
Yeah, so the answer is no.
Right.
But there are not ready for primetime theories on that one too. That, you know, it'd be premature to, you know.
So is it fair to say
I've got things under my cockamamie theory list, so if I can, we'll see.
It's a fair assessment that the little guy can't make a law or a muni code that trumps the bigger guy, like city council, state of California, the feds trump all?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we can't.
I know where he's going. There's a theory, because I did it before.
Cities can't do, you know, we can't create felonies, right? We can create misdemeanors. Misdemeanors are punishable up to 1 year, you know.
Very good.
So,
I'll get there. Hold on. I'm going to get through my cards first. Mr. Regan, this is for you. Mr. Bridegroom is asking when he can get the requested audits of the transitional housing providers, Family Promise and We Care. And then it's his understanding that HUD required these audits and they were not done for years.
We have an extensive audit and investigation going on in the housing program as I sit here tonight. I expect it to be completed over the next 3 weeks.
Okay, and then his second part of the question, has We Care and TGM been using, what is that, Vispadat? Or something similar to help homeless get housing in the past? Did I say that right? Yeah. I did. Go ahead.
Not sure, but I believe all shelters are using the Vispadat, are entering into HMIS. So any program that receives federal funding, they have to enter data into the Homeless Management Information System. And I believe that it's actually changing now that if you're also going to start receiving state funding, you will be entering into HMIS also. So if they're receiving that type of funding, they should be entering into the Homeless Management Information System.
Asked if they did that in the past, because I've heard from some homeless individuals that have been trying out, that for years they've been applying for programs, and they find out they're not even on the list.
Yeah, so it depends on who is trained to complete a Vispadat. So when someone is trained to enter into the Homeless Management Information System, they're most of the time trained also to complete a Vispadat, and then at that time they can do it. So, but each program, I mean, it's up to each program if they have someone trained to do it or not, and if they're doing them. Sometimes some programs may not, and they may refer them to the Access Center to then have the HAT team there complete the Vispadat.
Okay, DJ wants to know what is help, and is it viable to help here in Turlock? Stop what the city and council has been doing and still going toward the same. He has a concern for lack of accountability, transparency, effectiveness, and is it cost efficiency? Is that what that says? Thank you. Anybody? Do you want to, when you're saying what is help, do you want to narrow that down? Because I mean, help is like broad. You talking care team? You talking police department? Are we talking?
So this is sort of from past discussions, because even today it's been mentioned, helping people.
Sure.
Like Jeffrey Lewis says, there's different things to help, there's care to help, but when you just put this out there, you want to help even homeless, right? That's even been described as transient vagrants. There's even so there's even predatory criminals like that hang out around there and stuff, and even they're victims, are victims too. So when we're saying what is help, because this is where we're talking about growing or homeless or not, what does the city consider to be the priority help to the guy that's laying in Central Park right now, been there for 3 months, laying in his own vomit? What is the help that these plans are going to be the solution, I guess?
Sure. So, I'll tackle that. It is, and that's exactly what I was just going to say to you. Everybody's needs are different. The guy that's, laying in Central Park right now or is passed out in Central Park right now, does he have mental health issues? Does he have underlying substance use disorders? They all need housing, right? They all need to eat. So everybody's level of help is going to be different. We can't say as a city municipality, well, we're going to help you, but we're not going to help you. Or we're going to help you, but only this much. That's why the care team goes out and they make an assessment of the needs for each individual. And like Officer Dominguez said a minute ago, they go out to help one person and oh, wait, but I'm not going to go without my dog or my friend or whatever. And so is there an end? I don't think so, DJ.
So is this going to be along the line, you mentioned housing up front, even in your statement, is this a housing first? Because the reason I'm bringing this up is because in the past we've always been told, and it sort of was scoffed at with the Jeffrey Lewis question, we've always been told whatever we're going to do is supposed to lessen homelessness. That's supposed
right.
to be, and by the way, I've not heard this goal. I've heard this goal to help the homeless and people that may be getting ready to be homeless, and then possibly the people directly impacted by it. But really, it's sort of a misleading statement. This addressing homeless issues, as Jeffrey Lewis thing said, I think, it said, it says homeless issues and challenges. That's them. But I think people are talking about the homeless issues for the rest of the 73,000 people, because we've been told everything that would be done would lessen homeless and it would eliminate some negative impacts to the rest of the 73,000 that these 230 or
Yeah, so DJ, the overall goal is to lessen homeless. Folks, nobody wants homeless people in our city. That affects the quality of life for the other 73,000 people. Everything that we're doing is an attempt to lessen that. You want to talk about housing? We'll be here till tomorrow, because that's a whole nother can of worms and a whole nother problem that is going nowhere fast. But all of our efforts are not to grow the homeless footprint, DJ. We don't want it to get bigger. No, I don't think so. I disagree with that, and I'll tell you why. If you look at our point in time counts for the last 3 years, our point in time counts have decreased year over year. Our current point in time count is 175?
No, 233.
233.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the news article was that it grew, and I don't know if it was by a few, by the way, but here's the other thing too. This homeless ad hoc committee's been around supposedly for a while. I don't know the exact timeline, but over a year, 2 years, I don't know, 18 months, 2 years. There's other cities in the news, actually, even the Turlock Journal's sister newspaper reports on another city, Manteca, that decreased their homeless by 40%. So here we're talking about that there's answers in other cities that even some of us have known, shared the answer, that we're all sitting here talking legal, these legal, complex issues, but there's other cities that also say, and this is where we would like some direction, I think, what's our leadership say? Because there's some cities that say, too bad, sue us. There's some cities that say, we're not gonna do anything, and there's also laws that are not being addressed. So for example, at the Central Station fire, so someone was arrested, as the chief says, for setting something on fire, right? But guess what? There was stuff there that was illegal to be there on the railroad side of the property, garbage or belongings or whatever it was. That was already a hazard that could have been addressed first.
In railroad's jurisdiction? In the railroad jurisdiction?
Well, no. Well, it was in railroad jurisdiction and then on his property to the fence. Here's the thing though, there are laws though that are already being broken that create other crimes
Sure.
that are dangerous to the rest of us. That's
Right.
what I'm just saying. And it seems like it's downplayed for the rest of us, like as if the world's perfect and downtown businesses are thriving.
But it's not.
It's not having negative impact.
But it's not. So.
You ask these people here, they'll say that.
No, I'm agreeing with you. I'm saying it's not perfect. Everything's not great. But I will tell you, the one place we cannot get an MOU with to encroach into their jurisdiction is the railroad. We cannot go in there, and that's why that stuff was there. Chief, you talked to Manteca. You guys, we get these questions. Why can't we do what Malibu's doing? Why can't we do what San Diego's doing? Why can't we do what Manteca's doing? Would you address why we can't do and what is really going on in Manteca?
Yeah, let me start with the storage of property thing, DJ. It's like red light runners or other crimes in town. We don't catch everything. It doesn't mean that our people aren't out, and I will argue all day long that they are out there working their tails off on this property issue, and our numbers are going to prove that. And actually, thanks to you and kind of encouraging me to look into some of your questions and numbers. I'm working on a dashboard. We find a lot of challenges in our data system and how we're pulling it. That was something, a program that I inherited, but I'm still working through that. I'm already pulling a lot of helpful information, but our people are out there enforcing this stuff. And the fact that that was either posted or not posted or missed isn't because of a lack of them ignoring that problem. And I often hear about Ripon or Manteca or other jurisdictions and what folks are doing. Let me start with Los Banos, where I came from. Under 40,000 residents, no homeless programs to speak of, no shelters, and they have a significant homeless problem. They've moved them, tried the theory of moving them, behind in an empty lot and congregating on the homeless there. It failed miserably. Residents in the area were impacted. It was a terrible environment, so they went to breaking up the encampment, and they scattered all over town, similar to what it is in Turlock, because we broke up these encampments of 40 people and 70 people and 100 people, and now you see more of them in concentrated areas, but they're not in these large-scale encampments all over Turlock. Everybody's dealing with the issue. I'm a big communicator with my partners in the other cities. We're not alone. It tends to look like, or I feel like it's a Turlock problem and we're the worst. everybody is dealing with this homeless issue, and everybody's scratching their head and trying to come up with ideas to combat it. I had lunch with the Manteca City manager last week, and her statement to me, I'm telling it public, was, hey, don't do this thing that we did where you try to put the homeless all in one place, because it's a nightmare. So everybody's dealing with it to a degree, and we get compared to Ripon a lot. Ripon is a town of 16,000, and their calls for service are nominal. So their police officers aren't dealing with the crime, traffic accidents, other things that to the scale of a city the size of Turlock is dealing with. Everything else is a tremendous impact on our police resources. So those are somewhat unfair comparisons. We had a police officer call for a report from the city of Ripon, and when they gave them the case number of how many reports, with the year 23-300, the officer thought that they had gotten the wrong information and verified, I want to make sure I got it seems low. And they said, no, that's correct, because they're not dealing with crime to the degree. So that frees their police officers up to go out and speak to homeless individuals and continue to educate, and eventually they move along from the pressure. So that's what we are trying to do here. This is the long answer. We understand that it's impactful to your businesses. I live it, breathe it. I'm up at 11 o'clock at night reading through your emails and sending stuff to my team and saying, hey, I got another one. I've just started this new trend of, hey, everything that I get from the community, I'm sending to my captains and lieutenants so that they can feel what I'm feeling. It's not lost on us. I get it. I got my own wife yelling at me because she goes down to McDonald's to get something, and there's somebody blocking the driveway asking for money. So I hear it from all angles. I get the frustration. The only thing that I can tell you is the police department is committed to doing everything that we can that's not illegal or a violation of the law to combat this. And we're not taking it, we're not saying, Boise or all these decisions, now we can't do it. We're taking it right up to the line of what we can do, because we care that much about how it impacts you guys. So again, I don't like to hear it. I've got thick skin, but I don't like to hear, all of the complaints that come in all the time. It makes you feel a little defeated, but keep it coming, because it keeps me going. It keeps me understanding what's happening, and then it helps me communicate with this team. Hey, this is what's going on in our community, and with my team. Recently, we started a larger group in the community, because the police department was heavily dealing with the homeless population, and we thought, well, we'll invite the other service directors. Katie's involved, and Public Works involved. How can we all help each other? Something as simple as the police officers are going out with their trucks and picking up shopping carts, but how can we educate Public Works that's driving around cleaning up the parks? If you see a shopping cart, we're going to give you the parameters we operate under. You can take it, and we're teaching you how. So we have a bigger force of people within the city to do that. So every day these conversations are going on. We're not sitting in the ivory tower ignoring what's happening. I get it. I hate that we're dealing with this in Turlock as much as you do, because oftentimes it falls on my shoulders to try to fix it. And then I point to these other things where we have people that are going against us and trying to make it harder for us. We talked about the 20 plus cases. Every time you turn around and get a program up and running or something that you're going to do, somebody comes in the back door and tells you can't do that. Yeah.
Exactly what you mentioned, though, is what downtown specifically fills. I'm glad you mentioned that, but there's a difference. There was just statements mentioned about Monte Vista Crossing not needing help versus downtown, like it's a comparable thing. Monte Vista Crossing doesn't have 2 homeless shelters, day centers, the free food truck. Downtown does. So every time that we battle and invest and we put a gate up, or we have to put something in our window, which isn't exactly aesthetically desirable to us, but we got to keep homeless proof in our stuff, and dealing with it costs money, time, and then all of a sudden something gets added that, again, historically has seemed like it's produced more crime, more people. It's like, how much more can we take? And then to get that comment, like, oh, well, we don't have to do all this for Monte Vista Crossing. I mean,
Regan's going to answer that.
how much more can downtown take? And I'm pretty sure your staff, I'd like to know how much of this stuff is downtown. I'm pretty sure you're going to validate our concern that a lot of it is. I'm saying this all over Turlock, but it's concentrated downtown, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, hold on, because you're getting off topic. Mr. Wilson?
Well, listening carefully to people, a couple of things struck me. One, the police department is willing to enforce trespassing on private property. It requires the cooperation of the business community to sign a form allowing them to come in and do that. So if you're a business owner downtown, you have problems, fill out the forms, the police department can help you solve that problem by somebody impacting you on your private property. Secondly, we opened one day center here through WeCare. Maris is here in the audience, and so far the program has proven to be highly successful in keeping 40 or 50 people off the streets during the day in downtown Turlock. Thirdly, we're working with TGM, and we'll ultimately be building an additional day center in cooperation with them, which will take another, I don't know how many, Christian, about 40 or 50 people off the streets in downtown Turlock. I'm also looking at purchasing a motel locally that would offer 33 beds and 12 mobile home spaces, or motor home spaces, that could be used for housing, transitional housing, because housing is obviously a problem when it comes to homelessness. There's not enough. So that's 30 more beds we have in our armory, and it would help our city attorney sleep better at night knowing that we've got more capacity. And then the idea of going back and using the fair as a overflow is being pursued, because that also helps us from a legal perspective and a legal defense perspective to have that in place. That's all I got.
Okay, I got 2 more questions I got to get answered because I'm running out of time. Can service providers give bus or train tickets to homeless individuals?
Yeah, we get that a lot. I don't think, I mean, does anything prohibit it? I can't find any, they have to find it voluntarily. You can't force them to do it, but
Right.
I
And
haven't
we
found-
can't be putting people
I
on.
found it I haven't found anything that.
We've helped individuals. We had, when we first started in Turlock, we had a couple who, the woman was from, I forgot if it's like Oklahoma or North Nebraska, or Nebraska, I forgot where she was from. She came down, she was with her boyfriend. They had no support here, no help. We were able to connect her back with her mother, who was still in Nebraska, and she was willing to go back home. And mom said, yeah, we'll take you back home, come home. And we put them on a train, and they went back home, and they've been there since. It's been about over a year that they've left. So if someone has support, we will help them get to where they need to go. So we've seen some of that too, right? So we see some, I think when we did our pop-up, when I was talking to one individual, he was from like Long Beach, and he came down here to start a business with his friend where they were going to make cookies. And they started making cookies. It didn't work out. His friend's still living with mom. Mom told the friend, get out. You're not allowed to stay here. Now he's stuck here. So we were trying to help him get back home, which I believe he eventually did. So there's those situations where we can, right, if we have a place to go. But we also don't want to be the ones who are just going to be like, oh, here's a bus ticket, and now be homeless somewhere else.
Right.
So we won't do that. But if someone has support somewhere, we will. And that's another thing with housing. Like a lot of times we try to get someone to be housed. They have sometimes a support system here, but they've burned every bridge with that person because of their substance use or untreated mental health. So if we can get them the help, we can get them sometimes back home to where somebody's willing to help them out and they back with their support system, as long as they're willing to accept the help and work on their mental health and their substance use.
Thank you. I'm going to answer this next question, but if I'm wrong, please correct me or add to it. Federal and state grants allow addicts and mental health to continue taking drugs. Why is the city and county not building facilities to treat their problems? Stanislaus County has Nirvana, we have SRC, we have the Puff Center, and they're not at capacity. We can't force persons with substance use disorders into a facility. They have to want to go. We can't commit people that aren't conserved in a court-ordered conservatorship, so to speak. Did I leave anything out?
No, that's correct. So just kind of give you guys another stat. It takes about like 7 to 8 SUD assessments before someone really goes into treatment. So this is just, we have a data analyst that collects all the data, looking at people that are taking on their all the stats that we collect. And so it takes a few times before somebody actually gets into treatment. So like Ms. Monez said, there's times that we want to help someone out, but if they don't want the help, we can't force them into it. But there is treatment facilities. Yesterday we were having a conversation, I believe the county, there's a new thing coming down with CalAIM, also funding coming to the counties, and it looks like there may be some more residential treatment facilities or beds or transitional substance use beds coming to the county too in the future.
Thank you. What was your question, sir?
Back to the subject of how can we keep Turlock safe and what can we do to reduce homelessness. I had a couple things in mind. Maybe we could put in line some programs where people could work. We could start a program where people could accomplish small accomplishments and build something for themselves. You know, and we could reward them once they reach a certain level. You know, in their program with their addiction and with their homelessness. You know, maybe we can reward them by you know, giving them a voucher to somewhere or giving them something or offering them something in order to be placed in a home easier. You know, we need it like I'm sorry, sir. What was your name?
Officer Dominguez.
Officer
Dominguez.
Dominguez was saying that, you know, we need to help the people that want it. You know, I know a lot of people out on the streets. I grew up here in Turlock. I know a lot of people out on the streets that want help and that have been looking for help but don't know exactly where to find it, or it's too hard for them and they just need somebody to talk to. I know that you know, that you guys passed out letters to people that needed assistance rebuilding their homes here on First Street. If you guys haven't been on First Street, you know, there's a lot of mobile homes and families in those mobile homes that need help, that are on the verge of being homeless, added here in Stanislaus County in our streets. You know, I think that we need to continue to give the help to the people who come to you guys and that really want it. We need to really do that because I feel like there's just a lot of people that have came to, you know, to your guys' attention that haven't really received really nothing to help them with their addiction or to help them be placed in a home. You know, and I think that's just what we got to concentrate on is, like Officer Dominguez said, is helping the ones who really want it. And that's just all that I had to say. Thank you.
I think the mobile home park is a really interesting thing because she's sat here very quietly today, but our Director of Development Services reported to us the other day that there's a grant available through the state to help residents of mobile homes to repair things. And the city sent out a questionnaire and got a 50% return rate on that, which is, you know, astounding for any sort of survey or direct mail kind of effort. So there's a lot of interest in that, and that goes to helping people from falling from having a home to homelessness. So I think that's a great point. Can I
Please.
comment on a couple of things?
Yeah, you got about 3 minutes.
Okay.
Close it out.
Okay, I'll try to do it quicker than that. So I think that, you know, I was in a meeting a few months ago somewhere between 70 and 80 lawyers. They were all city attorneys from different cities around the state. And it was astounding to me that everybody's kind of is facing the same legal issues, right, in terms of what to do. So that was pretty fascinating, and you know, some of the ideas were okay. I mean, it's really, you know, everybody has the same difficulty. There was a frustration there, not to like take Raul's money away from him, but you've heard it tonight. The homeless population is largely in urban area, you know, in cities, but most of the money goes to counties because counties are responsible for social services, and there was a lot of complaining among city attorneys that have done it a lot longer than us about that the cities can't access the resources. You know, they're just not in charge of the money, right? So I'll just leave it at that, since you know we have city-county harmony here. But that was an interesting theme. And back to a question that came up, I don't know. I mean, he and me, we're the two hired by the city council, by the mayor and the city council, and I think we've both heard very clearly. I think there was a question about, is there an imbalance? Like, are we just trying to help the homeless, whatever that means? Well, I think it's been pretty clear to me. We're told to help those who can be or want to be helped, but also limit the impacts, the quality of life impacts on the rest of the community, right? And you heard of the federal courts. We're in this bizarre situation where, you have, say it's, I don't know, if it's 230 in Turlock, or say it's more than that, say it's 300 or it's 150, that's not a large population that's driving a lot of constraint about what can be done about certain issues, right? So that is an inherently very frustrating process, but my marching orders have been clear from the city council, and a lot of days I feel like, I haven't done a very good job at it, but I think we're getting closer. And the last thing I'll say is, and Raul mentioned this, and I think how this is going to shake out is, and I don't know the numbers, okay, but part of the homeless population has addiction issues, drug and alcohol issues, very hard to help. A lot, and then mental health issues, very hard to help. The state of California, I think it was in the late 60s or 70s, sort of closed all the state mental hospitals. You can't involuntarily commit people. So in most urban areas, there's going to be a critical mass of folks that are hard to help. You saw the Raul numbers, how many contacts it takes to move people along to the next level. It's actually quite astounding. Now, the last thing you talked about were the people who choose it as a lifestyle. Now, so I always believe data is your friend, right? I do not believe the federal courts have said that if you're choosing it as a lifestyle, that you don't have to follow the rules. Because they use, in this Grant Pass case did it, they use a lot the term involuntarily homeless, right? The protections are for the involuntarily homeless. So as we refine the data gathering, and the departments out there gathering data, the care teams out there gathering data, I believe over time it will at least adjust the number of beds you have to provide if we have the supportable data, right? If there's actually a group of people choosing it as a lifestyle. I mean, my view is I don't think the courts have said they enjoy that protection. But it's really hard to get there, right? The Grants Pass case, there was a big argument about, it was a class action thing, but there was a big discussion about had the people suing the city proved that the people were involuntarily homeless. And what it said is, well, and so what they did is, how well, maybe you don't know, if you're lucky, you don't know how lawsuits are, but, parties signed declarations about what happened, right, under penalty of perjury. So they were trying to certify a class action for the suit, and they had a bunch of declarations signed by homeless people saying, we're homeless, we're involuntarily homeless. And the city didn't contest any of that evidence, right? So it's just there, and so then all these rules come out of that. So anyway, that's a stupid way to end on data gathering, but I did it. So data is our friend, and the more we can gather, the more the issue can be addressed to, I think, the things most of you are concerned about.
Okay. So I have to adjourn in about 2 minutes, and I just want to close out with this. We're still working. We're not quitting. We're not giving up. And I appreciate what Chief Hedden said about, we hear you, keep it coming, because we're going to try and to continue to address everything that we can within the confines and the constraints that the courts have put on us. I mean, have you ever worked a project and had the bar moved on you? Like literally 20 times? Here's your bar. Oh, wait, no, it's here. Oh, wait, no, it's here. Do that 20 times. And I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to say plainly and candidly, this is what we've been up against. So these people sitting up here tonight, every one of them, their door is always open. I don't think anybody has ever been accused of being non-responsive. We try to answer everybody. I know you think everyone is, Ron. It's okay.
I have been very non-responsive, for sure.
To Mr. Bridegroom?
I'll admit it. Yeah.
Okay. No personal attacks. But, folks, seriously, we want to...
You just lied. You just lied. The chief is extremely responsive. We can't get the time of day out of the city council.
Okay,
Let me just say,
Mr. Bridegroom,
he
Mr.
raised-
Bridegroom,
he raised
you
it.
are out of order, sir.
I don't care.
I do.
I don't care.
So I'm gonna adjourn the meeting,
You're
and
gonna
I'm
adjourn
sorry,
the meeting
yeah, it's 7
and not
o'clock.
listen to the
It is
public at
7
all?
o'clock. I'm gonna adjourn the meeting, and I'm sorry that it's ending on a sour note. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.